It's time for the release of NATO's 1964 Cosmic Top Secret Study on UFOs and extraterrestrial life.
You're listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Welcome to this new Exopolitics commentary. And in this commentary, I'm going to be taking a look at a 1964 Cosmic Top Secret study that was conducted by the Supreme Headquarters of the Allied Powers in Europe, and that there was a whistleblower who came forward, a very highly credible whistleblower, who talked about seeing that study and describing its contents. Now, this is important today because, as many of you are aware, there has been an initiative to release UFO files by the Trump administration. And the first batch were released on the Department of War website, war.gov/UFOs. And in it, they released the first batch of UFO files, which were really essentially objects that couldn't be identified by apparently low-level analysis. They didn't know what this was. And so the idea was that, well, we're releasing these to the public, and maybe the public will help us answer the question of what these objects were, and that there's been a promise that in the future there will be more UFO files that will be released in future batches, and these files will presumably give us more of an idea of what's behind the UFO phenomenon. Now, what is hoped for in future releases is that there'll be more analysis of these UFO files that have been released by the Pentagon, by the Department of War under the Trump administration. And we'll find out about the extraterrestrial connection, which President Trump himself has said that he is very interested in UFOs that cast light on the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So it's hoped that sometime in the future that some of the more incriminating documents will be released that give us an idea of exactly what is behind the UFO phenomenon. Is it extraterrestrial life? Is it interdimensional beings? Is it inner Earth beings? Is it beings from under the oceans or something else? Well, the thing is, these kinds of questions were answered as way back in the 1960s. That in 1964, there was a top secret study conducted by NATO, and that it dealt with a lot of these questions. So the answers have been known for over 60 years. So when you have public officials, military officials saying, well, we don't know what it is, perhaps they themselves don't know because maybe they haven't been briefed on it. But we know that a study was conducted and only a limited number of copies were made and distributed to top military commanders and political leaders. So the person who first made this known was Command Sergeant-Major Robert Dean. And Bob Dean was someone that I interviewed way back in 2006. In January 2006, I did an interview with Bob Dean, and that was 20 years ago now. I mean, really, Bob Dean has since passed away. But in there, I asked Bob Dean some questions concerning what he saw at NATO's headquarters, and if he could respond to some of the criticisms that were being made by some critics at the time. So my article appeared in the Exopolitics Journal. It is still available online, and it described, the title is Command Sergeant Major Robert Dean's Secret UFO Assessment and Setting the Record Straight. So in this interview we did, he set the record straight on some criticisms that had been leveled against his assessment account by other veteran UFO researchers that really wanted to cast doubt on whether or not there was such a cosmic top secret clearance and whether or not the assessment was real. So what I want to do now is play you extracts from a video, actually a conference presentation Bob Dean did in 1993, so now we're talking 33 years ago, that he did a presentation at a conference. I believe this conference was in England. I'm not sure because the YouTube account doesn't give the details for where this conference was held and where this presentation was done. But it occurred 33 years ago, and Bob Dean walks us through the history of this cosmic top secret NATO document, and this way you get an idea of what is involved. So let me play the first segment that I want you to pay attention to when it comes to this particular conference presentation Bob Dean did.
In 1963, I was fortunate enough to be assigned to a place called Supreme Headquarters Allied Powers Europe, at that time located in Paris, France, an acronym of SHAPE. When I went to SHAPE in 63, I went with a cosmic top secret clearance. Cosmic top secret at the time was the highest level of clearance access in the NATO forces in SHAPE at all, and I understand it still is. It's the highest possible in NATO. And I was assigned to SHAPE headquarters in Roquencourt, right outside of Paris. When my first assignment was in Operations Division, a place we called SHOC, Supreme Headquarters Operations Center. And I became aware in 1963 of a study that had been initiated in 1961, a NATO SHAPE military study that Air Marshal Sir Thomas Pike, who was the Deputy Supreme Allied Commander in Europe under my boss, General Lyman Lemnitzer, had initiated a study in 1961 to determine just what in the hell was going on with the UFO matter. In the 50s and the early 60s, case after case after case involving large circular metallic objects flying in formations, obviously under intelligent control, flying over Central Europe, coming out of the Soviet zone, over the Warsaw Pact, coming over Germany, over France, turning north over the Channel, disappearing off of our radar over the Norwegian Sea. And in a number of cases, at least 3 cases that I know of personally, we and the Soviets almost went to war with each other over these objects. As many of the speakers have said here earlier about other comments, the Soviets thought they belonged to us, and we thought they belonged to the Soviets. And in one case in particular, in February of 1961, we literally almost started shooting at each other. Well, Air Marshal Pike was so frustrated about the fact that he was unable to get any information about these objects from either London or Washington at that time, because everything that London and Washington would send to SHAPE headquarters went directly to the KGB in Moscow.
All right, so there is Bob Dean giving us an account of how this cosmic top secret study was conducted, like the history, that there was this air marshal and that there were NATO leaders that were very concerned about these UFO sightings that had been occurring, that the Soviets and the Americans were uncertain whether it was the other side. And so there was this effort to find out what they were. Now, when Bob Dean came out and talked about this, now I'm not sure when it was that he first came out, 1993, I think it was pretty close to when he first came out, but early 1990s is when he first came out. And when he started talking about this cosmic top secret clearance, the debunkers, including those that I discussed in my interview with Command Sergeant Major Bob Dean said, well, there's no such thing as a cosmic top secret clearance. You're just making that up. And lo and behold, soon after Bob Dean came out, there was confirmation that indeed there was a cosmic top secret clearance, and that Bob Dean had that. So Bob Dean did describe the existence of this cosmic top clearance long before anyone else did, that there was such a security clearance in place, and NATO used it, and he had it when he went to the NATO headquarters, and he saw this document called the assessment. So in a later clip, Bob Dean goes on to describe more aspects about the history of this document.
So the Air Marshal established a study in '61 that lasted for 3 years. I learned about it when I was assigned there, and I saw it when it was published in 1964. It was a military study called an assessment. It has since been called the assessment, and its subtitle was an evaluation of a possible military threat to Allied forces in Europe. This was probably the most in-depth study, the most complete study that I have ever seen. Some of the top minds in Europe at some of the top universities, and some of the top military people all over the Western Alliance worked on this study to try to determine what the UFO issue was all about. Is there a threat involved? If there is, what are we going to do about it? What possibly could we do about it? And once this thing was published, and it was published only in 15 copies, Cosmic Top Secret, and because I was working in the shock, I had a chance to read it. I must be frank with you and tell you that having seen this thing and studied it, it literally has changed my life. The curious skeptic stopped being skeptical because it dawned on me for the first time in my life that this was serious business and this was real, and it literally turned my life around. So I will share with you a few things that I learned while I was involved with this. And I must tell you something else. I have to confess this. I do it every time. By sharing some of this information.
Okay, so Bob Dean worked at the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center, and when he got there in 1964, he saw this assessment. And this assessment is something that had a very high level of security clearance, and he could only access it when he was working at the Supreme Headquarters of the Allied powers in Europe and in the Operations Center. So he describes that. Now, he gives more of an idea of exactly what is in the assessment in this later clip.
The assessment was about 1.5 inches, maybe 1.75 inches thick. The study itself, in its conclusions. It was supported by approximately 8 inches of annexes, supporting documents, supporting studies, supporting research. There were annexes on radar and electromagnetic effects. There was an annex on optical and light analysis. A beautiful annex on photographic and holographic analysis. There was historical research and evidence. They went to some of the top people in England at Oxford and Cambridge on the historical evidence. There was metallurgical and technical analysis. There were atmospheric physics studies, biological analysis, and autopsies. The three issues that I thought of at the time of being the most important were the psychological studies and the impact upon the human race, sociological effects and implications, and probably what I have considered to be the most important annex and study of all in terms of its effect upon the world population is the theological implications and impact. As As I told you, when I got a chance to see this thing, it's a wonder that I didn't get arrested, and it's a wonder they didn't pull my clearance, because every time I was in duty in shock, I'd pull it out of the vault and read it.
So there you have Bob Dean talking about the implications of the assessment across a number of areas of interest, the analysis of the materials, the biologics that was also found. So there we're talking about the recovery of craft with biological remains, and that there were implications across all these sectors, especially the religious sector. That was very, very important, that the NATO leaders wanted to find out, well, how would this impact us in terms of society, in terms of militaries, economics, and of course, religion. And it's interesting that in 1961, you had a similar study being conducted in the United States that was released to the US Congress by NASA, and that's been called the Brookings Report. And what that described was the implications, the impact of the discovery of extraterrestrial life. And it observed that if extraterrestrial life was announced, that there was a possibility of societal breakdown, and that of the communities that would be most impacted, they identified the scientific community being most impacted, that lifelong scientists, engineers who believed equations that they had been taught in university were inviolable, were operating around the universe or could operate around the universe, that these actually were invalid, that they would be superseded by the equations of the extraterrestrials or of the alien life that had been discovered. So this NATO report did something very, very similar. Now, Bob Dean goes on to talk about the 4 major conclusions of the assessment. So let's listen to those.
Now, let me share with you what some of the 4 major conclusions of the assessment were in 1964, and consider those bits of information with what you've already learned in your own research and studies, and what's been brought out in films and UFO conferences over the last 10, 15 years. In 1964, they had determined, at least this is in the NATO study, and I know for a fact that this is the conclusions that had been reached by our own military as early as 1949. Number 1, the planet Earth is and has been the subject of an extensive, massive, a very thorough and detailed study by several extraterrestrial civilizations. Now that's an attention getter in itself. Number 2, these civilizations have demonstrated an extremely advanced technology, possibly hundreds or even thousands of years beyond our own. It gets better. There seems to be a process or a plan of some kind unfolding. The studies indicated and demonstrated that a development of some kind of program was underway. Collected indicated that the program has been going on for a very long time, possibly hundreds or even thousands of years. And some of my associates, research fellows, and I have concluded it's probably been going on longer than that. The study concluded that there did not appear to be a major military threat involved in 1964. That if they, whoever they are, were malevolent or hostile, there was absolutely nothing we could do, because the level of technology that had been demonstrated was so far beyond anything we had in 1964 that we felt that if they were hostile or malevolent, the game was up. It was all over with. Now, I think you can understand what kind of an impact this kind of information had on me as a young professional career soldier. It did indeed change my life. It It changed my life so much that from that point on, I became an avid UFO researcher. I read everything I could get. I stuck my nose into every classified document I could find, and having had a cosmic top secret clearance, which in the military is no small thing, I point to that with pride. You have to walk the thin line to get a cosmic top secret clearance. But I stuck my nose into everything I could find for the next 30 years. And I retired in the military in 1976. And as you probably well know, at that point I lost many.
Well, Bob Dean there describes exactly what the conclusions of the NATO study was, that they found that the extraterrestrials had been studying humanity for many thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years, and that they were incredibly advanced. So this was something that was concluded in the early 1960s from the studies of the UFO phenomenon. So really, when we are looking today at the disclosures that are happening on the Pentagon website, I mean, these are really very, very superficial when you compare them with what NATO concluded in 1964, that they know very well what the UFOs are, that there's no question left about, well, you know, is it a Russian, is it a Chinese craft, what kind of unknown is it? So this was all well known. The implications were known to NATO, and this document is something that really is very instrumental in understanding that the UFO phenomenon has long been understood by the military intelligence community, and that they actually have written up their results in various analyses in different countries, the US in particular, and that these analyses found their way into this 1964 NATO Cosmic Top Secret document. So the evaluations are out there, and they go back to the 1960s and even beyond, and even further back than that. So the idea that you've had a lot of UFOs flying out there, the military is still puzzled over what these are, is nonsense. And Bob Dean, you know, given his sterling military background, I mean, he became an E9, which is the highest enlisted officer you can achieve in the US Army. He became a command sergeant major. So he is someone that is very, very credible. So now let's play another segment from that 1993 interview where he, conference presentation, where he talks about a extraterrestrial species that can actually blend in with humanity.
In 1976, we knew of 4. Friends of mine in Langley have told me that we know of at least a dozen, perhaps 20. The estimates that I learned in Europe from people who've been deeply involved and bona fide researchers say it's well over 100 that are here, that are coming and going. Now, some of them are not coming and going. Some of them are here and have been here and are staying here. In 1976, we knew, and this is one of the things that really upset the generals, we knew that one of those groups looked exactly like we do. I mean exactly. They could put on a coat and a tie, a dress, a suit, sit next to you in a restaurant, sit next to you in an airplane, and you would never know. You would never know. And if you don't think that bothered the professional military people who are primarily paranoid, because we're trained to be, and I tell you from my own experience, we were trained to be paranoid. It was the nature of our business, and I think Graham will agree with me here. I know Wendell will, that the military point of view is a paranoid point of view. The idea that there was an intelligent, high technology, high civilization from somewhere else here in our midst drove them up the wall. To consider that somebody could be walking up and down the corridors of SHAPE headquarters who was not literally human, or could be walking up and down the corridors of the Pentagon, or, God forbid, in the White House, or 10 Downing Street. Oh my God, this nightmare went on and on and on. They looked exactly like we do. And some of the government contacts that have taken place where we have spoken with them has purposely proven that. I mean, beyond a doubt. Some of
I really want to emphasize here that what he said is very critical for understanding the UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon, that it was known back in 1964 that there were at least 4 races, and one of those races looked so much like us that they could intermingle, infiltrate humanity, get positions in the military or in political circles, and they just wouldn't be known to be extraterrestrials. And this was something that he was one of the first, I don't know if he's the first, but certainly one of the first to reveal that extraterrestrials were walking amongst us. This was of course back in 1993.
Them can put on a military uniform, and you'll never know. That drove the generals crazy. It affected a 4-star Air Force general that I knew in 1964 so badly that he ended up putting in for retirement not too long after that. The air deputy was named Robert Lee. He worked for General Lemnitzer. He was the U.S. Air Force Air Deputy in 1964. He'd been an old friend of Curtis LeMay's. They chewed cigars. They went to school together. LeMay, as you remember, was the commanding general of the Strategic Air Command. Well, Bob Lee was a fine soldier, a fine military airman, highly decorated, highly respected. And when he read this assessment, his aide told me that the old man sat down, threw his hat across the room and said, "Good God, do you know what this means? Just think for a moment. Everything we've got, our missiles, our satellites, our rockets, our planes, the hydrogen bomb, everything we have that we point with pride means nothing." And it was a shock to the old man. It really affected him badly. He wasn't ready for it. And he literally did put in for retirement not long after that. The psychological effect on him was horrendous. But now consider for a moment that we've got intelligences. We have high technology, advanced intelligences coming and going, some of them staying here, in our midst, being intimately involved with an interrelationship with us for not only hundreds but thousands of years. My God, can you consider the implications? How do you, as an elected government, go out on TV someday and tell the people that this is what we have concluded? Now, for many years,
Right, so Bob Dean there is just describing the impact on senior military officials and even others of high or senior rank in political circles of the truth that some extraterrestrials are walking amongst us, that date from civilizations that are thousands of years ahead of us, that they've been intermingling or observing us for many thousands, hundreds of thousands of years, and that the psychological shock of that was enough to kind of force some of these people to take early retirement because the phenomenon was just so vast, so big, that these extraterrestrials actually are among us and that they can infiltrate or that they can achieve high positions, and the senior military leaders, political leaders wouldn't know who among them is an extraterrestrial, a human-looking extraterrestrial or not. Now, Bob Dean said that the assessment also described the results of UFO crash retrieval operations and reverse engineering back in the 1960s. So let's play a segment from his conference presentation describing that as well.
Anyhow, I'm talking about briefly what's going on over at Groom Lake. We have extraterrestrial technology over there that we have received from two separate sources. Some of the hardware was retrieved as a result of several crashes that have taken place. I mean, we know about the crash at Roswell. Don't doubt for a moment that happened. That's all true. That took place. There was a crash at Kingman. There was a crash at Aztec. There have been crashes all over the United States. There were crashes right outside of LA. There was a crash in Washington State some years ago. A couple of crashes in Mexico that we retrieved the hardware. Not only did we retrieve the hardware, but we retrieved bodies. Some dead, some alive. Some of the alive bodies we kept alive for quite a while. Rumor has it that at least one of them is still alive. Well, that's one story. The other story is there are 25 or 30 of those little guys over there at Groom Lake at about 20 levels down at S4 that are working with us, that gave us hardware. And we are not only putting bits and pieces together, but we are flying the aircraft and we are flying prototypes. When NBC went over there here just a few months back, I don't remember the exact date, they were doing a little follow-up story on the Aurora because people were wondering what the hell was shaking LA every Thursday at 7 in the morning. And they sent a team over there. Well, they didn't get any pictures of the Aurora because the Aurora doesn't fly out of Groom Lake. It flies out of another base about 100 miles northwest of Groom Lake, beyond Tonopah.
Now, that's very significant what he just said there, that these craft, these prototypes that were being tested, that had been reverse engineered from recovered extraterrestrial craft, and he mentioned the SR-74, the Aurora, is the Aurora project, that was something that was classified at the very highest level, and that was a product of some of these reverse engineering attempts. Now, there is a witness by the name of Niara Isley, who was stationed at Tonopah Test Range back from 1981 to 1984, and she saw some of these prototypes, some of these flying saucer craft prototypes that were being tested at the time, and she described the consequences of that in terms of the kind of punishment and trauma she suffered because they wanted to prevent her from remembering that. So, you know, that is something that is very significant, that Tonopah Test Range is a place where some of these craft were being flight tested. So let's continue with what Bob Dean had to say.
But what they did while they were over there is they got some incredible pictures, and the NBC reporter with this camera set up there says, my God, what we seem to be seeing here is something that apparently is violating all of the known laws of physics, like a UFO. And there that little Gomer is on the film, circular, with the blow-up showed it to be somewhat metallic, and there it is, coming up and hovering, darting around, going back down, darting off at a very high rate of speed, coming back, doing all kinds of things that traditional aircraft can't do. So over there at your $50 billion skunk works, we have hardware that's flying. Apparently we do have a relationship with one alien group over there. Rumors that I have heard from reliable people that I trust indicate that we now have a relationship with at least 3 different groups. Not only the one that looks like us, but the big-nosed guys and the little grays. And this thing gets curiouser and curiouser, as Alice in Wonderland said. What is our government up to? What kind of involvement do they really have with alien intelligence? And why is it important that we pay attention and try to get a handle on what's going on here?
All right, so there you have Bob Dean spelling out what is going on with the extraterrestrial phenomenon as it was evaluated back in this 1964 document. Now let's consider where we're at the moment with the current files that are being released, and you have members of Congress asking for more files to be released by the intelligence community, by the Department of War. You have the executive branch of the White House saying, well, release these files. We want to know what's going on. Well, we know what's going on. We know from Bob Dean and others that analysis of those UFOs was done back in the 50s and 60s, and they knew very well what the phenomenon was all about, and that there were studies done and reports done, and that the assessment was completed in 1964. And Bob Dean says 15 copies were made, and these were distributed to very high-level officials within NATO. So when we're looking at the current situation today, you have members of Congress like Tim Burchett, Eric Burleson, Anna Paulina Luna, all asking for UFO files, all asking for these to be released. You have members of the kind of intelligence community like David Grush, Lou Elizondo, and others saying, well, I was part of this program or that program, and we know that this phenomenon exists. So we have quite a number of high-level officials pointing out that they know or are seeking documents concerning the truth about UFOs and extraterrestrial life. So what I recommend to them is that, first of all, they've got to consider the testimony of these people like Bob Dean, going all the way back to 1993, who revealed the existence of this NATO cosmic top secret document. And right there, you will find a lot of the analysis of what the phenomenon is. And then we get to talk about the reality of extraterrestrials walking amongst us. It's not just a matter of saying, well, the UFO phenomenon is real, there's been crash retrieval operations, there's been reverse engineering, but that it's also known that the extraterrestrials have been meeting and interacting with top-level officials. The assessment describes that, and that some of them are actually walking amongst us, that they look so similar to us. This is what we need to start looking at, that kind of evaluation that are found in various documents. So I do look forward to more of these kinds of documents being released, but the process has just begun with this first batch of documents that was released by the Trump White House and the Department of War. And as we get more batches, that we hopefully will get more of the analyses that have been secretly conducted. We don't want to just have more videos and photos of UFOs or of documents that just refer to so-and-so saw a UFO. And we want the analyses, we want the evaluations. These have been done. We know the NATO assessment was done in 1964 over a 3-year period. There have been other similar assessments done, evaluations done. What we want are those kinds of documents released. So with Bob Dean's testimony, we know that there is at least one that was conducted by NATO. What's happened since then, we need to find out. That should be very high on the list of documents being sought by these different members of Congress and the Trump White House. So that really gives us an idea of where we need to look. Now, as far as what I'm going to be doing in the future, I'm going to be doing a webinar on these kinds of issues. I'll be bringing up all of the latest developments concerning the document releases that the Pentagon has been conducting, but also looking at testimonies like Bob Dean's, looking at those and analyzing, well, what does that tell us about this phenomenon that we're not being told under these document releases that are occurring in the White House? So that's going to be on May 30, and you can register on my website, exopolitics.org. You can either register through Crowdcast, which is the platform I'm going to be using for this webinar, or you can register as a Patreon member. If you join at a particular tier, you'll get either a discount, a significant discount, or you get it for free. So you can go to my Patreon website, patreon.com/Michael Salla. So that is it for this commentary today. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to doing more of these in the future. Aloha.
You have been listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.